Hello and welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to be planning my bullet journal setup for NaNoWriMo this year. And as you can see, I'm not really a bullet journaler. This isn't my current journal just looks like this. It actually is just a journal full of a lot of mind maps and then other random thoughts and notes and stuff. But I decided 2 days ago that I was going to do NaNoWriMo this year. I'd been telling myself that I was too busy, I had too much on, and that I couldn't do it. But then I realised that was just me making excuses, and actually I do have time and I'm going to make time. Oh, this is the pen I use. It's a really lovely pen. This is anything that you'll need if you want to do the setup with me. It's from Caroline Gardner. It's a black gel pen essentially. I just really like the feeling of how it writes. I'm not really a bullet journaler, but there were some specific things that I wanted to think about and kind of plan for, and like particular rituals I wanted to do every day throughout the month of November to help me get through NaNoWriMo. So it just felt like setting up something bullet journal-ish would help me get through this month and help me focus on my priorities. So yeah, it's very kind of last minute, pretty imperfect, just going for it. If you don't like lines that are drawn without a ruler, then click off now. You're not going to like this video. A lot of just, going for it really. Focusing on the function of this journal more than complete beauty. So I started with this quote that I saw on Pinterest that I really liked, and it says, "Not everything needs to be perfect to still be wonderful." And I didn't realise how apt this quote would be as I was drawing the pages for this NaNoWriMo setup. But I really lived by that quote, as you will see as we go through here. And then I just wrote the month of November NaNoWriMo just for a title page, just to kind of switch my journal into bullet journal mode rather than random notes mode. And now, as you can see, I'm drawing a very wonky rectangle. But yeah, living by the quote on the first page, still wonderful. Though looking back now, perhaps should have used some kind of measuring, ruling tool, even just something flat and straight. A book probably would be helpful here. But went for it anyway. It didn't really measure properly either, so then I got to the bottom here and realised I had this weird massive space of boxes at the bottom. Kind of left that for a second, didn't know what to do with it, moved on to writing the days of the week, starting with Monday because I can't think in Sundays. Sundays don't start the week for me. There's definitely an end of the week day. And also it's really nice how November starts. November 1st is on a Monday this year, which is just quite satisfying. Oh, so then I drew an extra line at the bottom of the calendar, decided to think of this wibbly wobbly calendar like a Google calendar or like a calendar on your phone where you can scroll through and you start to see the next month pop up. So that's what I turned this into. I was like, well, we'll have a bit of December peeking through at the bottom. So yeah, that's how we got around that. Randomly added in a gold pen. I don't use gold anywhere else in this, but just, I think I was panicking a bit at this point. I was going for imperfect, but this was a bit more imperfect than I mentally envisioned. So added some gold in for fun. Wrote in the days of December fun, and my dog's head popped in. Oh yeah, if you see the flowers moving at any point, that isn't some kind of Halloween ghoul. My dog just started trying to eat these leaves. Don't worry, he's fine, and they're plastic, which I don't know if that makes them better or worse for him, but he didn't actually eat anything, so rest assured he's okay. I just wrote November again on the side, fill in that gap because I didn't really know what else to do with it, and then said good riddance to the calendar spread. Don't know if I'll use it or not, or if I'll just glue those 2 pages shut and forget I drew them, but yeah, that's how the calendar spread turned out. And moving on. Okay, so the next page I did was, what was it? I can't remember. What did I do next? Oh, I think next I did my month's vision. So this is just, again, something I kind of wanted to do myself. One of the main reasons I wanted to do the setup was to kind of get myself to ask some questions before NaNoWriMo starts, to kind of get myself in the right mindset for the month. So I have a month vision of how I want to go into this month, what I want to prioritize, what I want to think about, so that I can kind of be intentional this month and not just let it, slip by like months often do. I don't know where this year's gone. So I really want to make a point of, focusing on particular goals this month and focus on how I want to feel, and just being intentional with the month. So the first thing I did was have a space for my word of the month. I don't always do this, but I just wanted to give myself a bit more focus this month. Then I drew a space to write out my goals. This is something I do every day, or almost every day. I've heard that it's really helpful just to make yourself aware. Well, apparently if you can read or write your goals down twice a day, then that's even better, because it just keeps them at the forefront of your mind. Often we set goals and then kind of forget about them, and so they don't really happen. But when you're constantly reminded all the time of what your goals are, it just helps you achieve them. And also, side note is to write your goals out in the present tense as if they've already been achieved. I really like to start them by using the phrase, I'm so happy and grateful that, and then whatever happened or I did, because it just feels more positive and more confident and optimistic, and apparently it helps you achieve them more. So I currently have 7, so I left 7 spaces for goals, and then I moved on to how I want to feel. So this is going to be my top 5 emotions I want to feel this month. They don't necessarily have to be positive things either, just as another side note. You could be energized and inspired and creative, but actually for my word of the month, since I chose the word grow, that's not necessarily going to be comfortable all the time. They're called growing pains for a reason. So one of the emotions I want to feel this month could be fear or discomfort or something like that, and actually that might be what's needed if I want to grow. So they don't have to all be amazing emotions, they just have to be emotions that reflect what you're doing this month, what your goal is to do this month, and how you would be feeling if you were doing those things. So it wouldn't necessarily be confident, it might be uncertain, but that at least would be a feeling to show that you're doing what you want to do. And then the last thing I did at the bottom was some things I'm going to do to make it happen. So it's just some practical ideas of specifically what I'm going to do this month to make sure I feel that way. So for example, writing every day and posting videos however many times a week, or specific action things that you can measure that I'm going to do to try and make sure I meet my word of the month and meet the ways I want to feel this month. So then moving on, I did a page for my book vision. Because I suddenly decided to do NaNoWriMo so last minute, I've had a book idea for a long time, quite a lot of months, but I haven't really focused in on it. So I'm definitely a planner. So cram planning to get my book into as much of a clear vision as I can before I start writing on Monday. So I started with 2 boxes for message and misbelief. I'm really into Lisa Cron's book, Story Genius. Every book I've written has always been focused around I always start with characters for some reason, and so I start with a character and then I work out character's misbelief, and it can take a while sometimes to pin down character's misbelief. I've been trying to think of my character for this one's for a while and it's not quite feeling right, but once you get that clicked in, what the misbelief is and also what they want and how those two things contradict and conflict, it makes the whole rest of the plotting so much easier, because everything kind of becomes obvious after that. It all just really slots into place, so it's definitely worth spending time if you like planning. So then I have a box for how I want readers to feel. This is often pretty similar, I think, in most of the books I've written. For me, I write love stories and contemporary romance, so I want people to feel cozy and warm and full of love and joy and calm and peace and a sense of home. So all those kind of escapism, haven sort of feelings, but it's, I think, helpful still to specifically focus on that and have that in mind the whole time you're writing, because you're really writing a book, well, partly for yourself but also partly for your reader. And so then also to get into the right kind of vibe and feeling, I don't always do this, but I often do get inspired, at least when I'm trying to work out a plot, from other, usually books or movies, to know what makes the stories you love work. I find it really helpful to get inspiration for the really big picture storylines from other books and movies. So that's partly what that's for, but also you could use this to get the kind of vibe again. So and like an extension of how you want the readers to feel. And then the final thing is the playlist. And I guess you could interpret this two ways too. Either the playlist that you think accurately represents the vibe of your book, or a playlist for you to write along to. For me, there's definitely some overlap, but I generally use lo-fi music to write to because it kind of feels like I'm writing in a coffee shop, and I really like that. But I also really like, just in general, I really like indie folk music, but I feel particularly creative when I'm writing to that. So if I'm ever gonna write along to music that has lyrics, I'll write along to indie folk music. I really like Sodven and NaNoWriMo if you're interested. Okay, anyway, moving on. So the next page I drew out was my writing routine. I think it's really helpful to have a specific routine every day, particularly during something like NaNoWriMo, just because the more you can make it feel like a habit, the more you know exactly what you're going to do, the less you procrastinate. It's a lot easier to procrastinate when you don't have a set specific thing to do at a specific time. So I really like to have specific time to write and a quite like rigid structure. It may not work for everyone, but this is generally what I find works for me. And I also really like to get my writing done in the morning, which is not something I ever thought I'd say. I used to always be at least a night owl. Not that I like going out at night. I get really sleepy if I go out at night, but if I'm at home, my brain is just totally wired, and I feel like that's always been my most creative time. I get a lot of ideas at night. Like sitting up in bed, I can have whole thought downloads of story ideas and stuff, and I used to find it really hard to get to sleep because I think so much. So I always thought surely it's better for me to write at night. But I think I was just on a podcast or something one time, I heard someone say they woke up and literally started writing as soon as they woke up, before their brain had even really switched on, because it sort of meant that their internal editor hadn't really switched on either, and so everything just kind of flowed more for them and they felt more creative, and it was just easier to get the words down. So I was like, well, I'll try it. And it was totally amazing. I thought my writing would be absolute rubbish, like total drivel, if I wrote first thing in the morning, but I realised the quality of what I was writing, not that it was like top-notch quality, but the like standard of it was no different from me writing any other time of day. And actually I think I wrote a lot faster, and there definitely wasn't any judgment there because I wasn't really awake yet anyway. It was really like the creative side of my brain was switched on, but nothing else in my brain was switched on yet. So I found it really useful to write then, and it definitely surprised me that my writing wasn't any worse, at least, than any other time of day. So if you haven't tried writing first thing in the morning, I definitely recommend giving it a shot. I would say at least you've got to have some kind of plan of what you're going to write if you're going to do it this way. So the night before, I would know what scenes I was going to write when I woke up in the morning and have the goal, conflict and setback, just a one sentence points for each of those things in that scene planned beforehand, just so I was clear on what I was going to write structure wise, but then all the creativity stuff could just kind of come out after that. And actually writing in the morning is backed by science too. The main thing is that your limbic system, which is the part of your brain that is really like the centre of all your creativity, is activated overnight while you sleep. And so it's still kind of switched on first thing when you wake up in the morning, which means it's easiest to access again before your prefrontal cortex, which is the whole rational judgment, decision-making, realist part of your brain switches on, which usually overrides the limbic system and kind of blocks it out. So before that's been activated and while the limbic system's still active in the morning, that's kind of why it really, scientifically actually is easier to be creative first thing. Okay, anyway, enough of routine talk. Now I'm moving on to my daily word tracker. So a lovely hand-drawn graph. We're going to see how easy this actually is to fill out. Don't know how it's going to work on a blank piece of paper with no grid lines at all. So I've got the number of words on the y-axis, and then I'm going to have the date along the x-axis. And so I kind of basically just want it to turn into a straight line is the goal. So day 30 should line up. I'm aiming for a bit more than traditional nano amounts because I know I've done this before. I know I can do it again, and it's possible for me. So I'd say I definitely think everyone can manage the nano amount, well, within limits, unless I don't know the intricacies of your daily life, but I definitely think it's possible if someone has the free time, if someone has at least an hour free a day. I think everyone can manage the nano amount, but you have to really not edit yourself and just go for quantity potentially over quality a bit. So I'm going for 90,000 words. I'm going to do probably 3 sprints a day as I wrote in my writing routine, and I know that in one sprint for me, which is usually 20 or 25 minutes, I know I can manage 1,000 words in that time. So So 3 sprints a day, 3,000 words over 30 days, 90,000 words. So that was my thinking with that. And then I'm going to just break it down a bit more in a daily word count tracking table so that I can actually record each individual sprint's specific amount, work out the total, and then pinpoint that total on the graph on the previous page. And actually the camera cut off here, so you don't get to see me, but ta-da! This is what that word count table turned into. And I actually am missing a line. There should be another line between where it says sprint 4 and total, but I never noticed that. So this is what the table looks like. Okay, now is my affirmations page. And I did want to just spend a minute talking about why this is one of the big reasons really why I wanted to set this bullet journal up for NaNoWriMo. I think belief is pretty much the key thing that means someone is able to write a book, and particularly write a book in 30 days. Having affirmations is really helpful just to create belief really. I thought I'd give you some ideas of different affirmations you could use. So that's that for affirmations. Probably need to cut that down, that was very long. Let's get back to the rest of the video. Okay, so still sort of on a similar, more belief and vision kind of focus. I also created a page for a letter from my future self, and this is just something I do like intermittently, but just get yourself in the mindset again of it already being done and how it would feel when it's already done and what you would tell yourself from the future. So it's basically you to write to yourself from yourself at the end of November, having written your book. If you're talking to yourself now, what is that self on the 30th of November telling you? What have they learnt throughout the month? How are they feeling now? How are they celebrating? Anything really. It's kind of just what comes to mind, but I think particularly if you can focus on emotion words, focus on how you're feeling at the end of the month. Don't try and plan it or come up with any ideas beforehand. Literally just write dear me and then just free form it and then kind of leave it at that. And you don't really have to look back at that either. That's kind of, you can always look back at the end of the month if you want, but that's kind of just, I don't know, I just find it helpful to kind of get those ideas down and then let them be, let them sit. Okay, and then the final thing I did was my daily spread. So I'm going to do these points every day. Hopefully I won't give up on drawing these boxes every day. I guess I can always just, dot point these points every day if I do give up. But at least I've got the 1st of November done. So I've got, first of all, a space. This big column down the left is my time blocking section. Definitely I am most productive when I plan every minute, hour of my day, and I often resist doing this because I don't like, there's kind of this fear of disappointing yourself, but it just really, for me at least, if you're a procrastinator, having specific things at specific times really helps, because it's so easy to procrastinate, as I said earlier, when you don't have a set goal to do a set time, or when things are vague, or when you've got lots of time to potentially do them. But once they become official, there's a bit more pressure there, and it's just clearer. It's just like, well, I know I'm going to do, I know I'm set to do now. I just look at my time block list. What does it say? It was 11 o'clock now. What does 11 o'clock say? Yeah, I find that really helpful. Then there's a section for me to every day write out those big goals that I'd already written on the earlier page. So that's just kind of like writing the goals like an affirmation. Then there's a box for my number 1 priority of the day. Probably most days that's going to be to write my 3,000 words, but it might change. I think that's okay too, to be realistic in that sense that NaNoWriMo might not be your priority every day. You might have other life stuff that comes up or that you already know is important. And then there's a box for affirmations, so you could always pick a few of the ones that we went through before and just write them out here, however many you can fit. Maybe I need more space for affirmations, don't know, we'll see. This might adapt as I go through the month. And then the final box is for word count, and that's it. That is my very imperfect, quite simple bullet journal setup for NaNoWriMo. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful, or I don't know, made you feel better if you're suddenly scrambling last minute like me. Have a good rest of your weekend. Bye.